Yeah, so I'm Blake.
I'm Justin, and as Kevin has said, we're from Intersection, and we are a part of the LinkNYC Android tablet team. So today we're going to give an overview of what LinkNYC is, and specifically what a link is, and how New Yorkers can use the integrated tablet. We'll also go over the Android user management system and some of the challenges we've faced with writing applications that run across multiple users. And then towards the end, we'll close with what we as engineers would like to see in later iterations of the tablet, and of course leave some time for Q&A. So in case you haven't seen them already in the streets, the link is basically like a giant monolith, and it features free gigabit Wi-Fi for your personal devices, USB charging to keep those devices powered on, and a touchscreen kiosk to browse the internet, make free phone calls anywhere in the US. The reason the whole thing started was that the de Blasio administration wanted to take the old antiquated payphone infrastructure and repurpose it for free Wi-Fi and phone calls. We had to maintain phone calls because if we're taking out old phone booths, that was a utility that New Yorkers had expected to have over time, so that needed to also be maintained. LinkNYC was awarded the 12-year franchise for its innovative and community-first approach, and to us, this is how we see New Yorkers and visitors alike interacting with New York City.
So yeah, we've deployed several hundred in Manhattan already and in the Bronx, and we're going to be in all 5 boroughs by the end of the year. And after the deployment, we've been able to get user feedback. And some of the interesting things we've seen is like this person to a not to be named ISP was having some issues, so they canceled their internet and just decided to use LinkNYC, which was right outside their office. Yeah, and beyond that, we also get some awesome Reddit posts like these partners who are not, when they're not saving lives, they're out parking next to a kiosk just to use the Wi-Fi to catch up on coursework. So we've seen people from all over New York using these things, just connecting, using the tablet to make phone calls, to catch up on the latest news or whatever, And so we've also seen it also help bridge this digital divide. We've seen a lot of people that traditionally don't have access to the internet all the time been able to connect. Here's one person tweeting about how it helped aid them out of homelessness. It helped connect them to loved ones and people they haven't talked to in a while, as well as we give them a platform to apply for jobs and just kind of check out what they can use to help them.
So now that we've seen how folks are using the kiosk, we're going to quickly give you guys a run through of what a person sees when they come up to it. So when a person walks up, they're greeted by an Android Daydream. I think that was introduced in Jelly Bean, something like that. And we use that as a screensaver so that while nobody's interacting with it, there's still something on the screen. It's an attractive loop of images showing the features. The lock screen is disabled, so upon tapping, the Daydream is closed and you're brought up to our custom launcher. You may be familiar with something like Nova Launcher. It's just a different way. So this is our own custom one. At the bottom, we have our app drawer, so that anybody that is using it has access to the internet browser, Google Maps to do navigation and directions, and also do Vonage calling. When the user is done and they have the option to either use this little button at the bottom left corner or bottom right corner for you guys to exit their session, or if they're in a rush like most New Yorkers are, they can actually just walk away. The Android Power Manager will detect the inactivity and after 30 seconds display a second logout dream. This is where it pulls up, and after 15 seconds, if nobody continues the session, it'll actually close out and a new session will be started. Right there.
So yeah, we leverage Android heavily in building these tablets. We have a custom browser that we built, and we also have a lot of background services for user management flow, as well as doing updates and health checking. So one of our main things that we've worked on is just user privacy and security. We don't want one user to be able to access the data of another user. And as I'm sure you know, Android's built on top of the Linux kernel. And the Linux kernel, one of its main features is users. And so Linux users allow process isolation so that one user can't hog all the resources of another user, as well as access data from the other user. And so it just allows some protection level. So in Android, every app gets its own user. So you can see here the web browser has its own user as well as the bondage user here. So if you write like an app that tries to hog up all the memory, the Pokemon app can still run, Yeah. So Android also added in Jelly Bean, they added multi-user support. So you can create a new user, hand it off to your friend, and then you can be sure that anything that you have on your user, they can't see. So if you're logged into Uber, you're logged into whatever, they can't spend your money or whatever. And so as part of the Linux user model, you can also see that the web browser of this user can't access the data in this web browser. We leverage this heavily as part of the tablet. For every session, you get your own Android user. And you can kind of see a demo of that here. So say you're this session, you can see the last session just got deleted. The last user just got deleted. We move on to a new user. So all the data in there is fresh and new. You can't see anything. You can't see the phone calls the last person made or anything like that. And then once you're done with your session, we'll delete your user and move on to another Android user.
All right, so because we're working with all these different users, there's a couple of things that we'll need to kind of highlight. Here, this is pulled straight from the AOSP source code documentation. If you're looking at it and are kind of confused, I get it. It's not exactly clear or concise or easy to read, but there are a couple things to note. You'll see we have 2 users labeled at the bottom, user 0 and user 1. User 0 is called the primary user. They exist, there has to be a primary user, and they exist through the entire lifetime of the tablet. So as soon as you boot up and when you close down, that user has to be running. Application A, although they're kind of colored differently, it's still 2 separate instances of that application, and they're each running as a separate process in each user. There's a service listed at the bottom called ShareMe, and it has the single user declared as true. And what that actually means is that that service will only run as one process and only in the primary user. All other components that exist above, the proxies, the regular components, things like your activities and your views, they all get separate instances and run into separate processes. So for us, the biggest example that we have for multi-user applications on the tablet is our emergency application. So if somebody comes up and presses that 911 button, the key press is dispatched to a sticky service, so it exists for the duration of the tablet, and it's also running a single user in the primary user. The service has a lot of responsibility. First, it has to place the call, and so it places the call as primary user. The call is then managed by a separate service, which has to run as the current user, because for a phone call, it has to be interacted with, so it has to run as the current user, so user 1 in this case. It also has to start the activity to tell the user that they're in a call. Again, because it's being presented to the user, it has to be presented as the current user. The big problem is that the initial emergency service that's listening for the button presses needs to know what the state of the phone call is, because if somebody presses the button again, it's going to try and make another phone call. So to actually know what's going on with the call, we have to do a lot of the multi-user communication. And so what that means is to get the information from the call manager service, it has to send a broadcast. It broadcasts the call state that changes to an exported receiver. These receivers act as the proxy component that we saw from the last slide, and informs the service that it's okay to start another call. So what Android did was expand the current APIs that I think a lot of us are familiar with. And their solution was, instead of going too crazy, they just said, let's append as user to all the methods that we already know, and then we'll tack on an additional user object that becomes the target. So if you want to start an activity as a user, you say start activity as user. If you want to send broadcast, instead of send broadcast, you say send broadcast as user. During the initial development, we had like a lot of trouble wrapping our heads around like how different users should be interacting with each other. And so we constantly ran into issues where we thought we were trying to start an activity and it wouldn't show because we're trying to start in the primary user. Again, we're trying to tell the primary user that this is going on, and a lot of things weren't working. So we ended up kind of having to munge like a log helper, and just every time we make a log, we print which user, what's the user ID of the one trying to complete the action. Over time, we've kind of worked it out and got a little experience under our belt, and we kind of better quickly identify when those sorts of things are happening. But I don't know about Blake, but it still occasionally happens to me. So I just forget sometimes. Right.
So yeah, that's kind of like the current state. We've shown you a couple of things that we've been working on the tablet, and of course, as engineers, we like to dream up other features that we might not get past our product manager. But here's a couple of them. Like we think that as you're reading a Reddit post or something, you might want to take it with you when you're headed out. You need to go catch your Meetup. So it would be great if we could send that web page from the tablet to your phone using BLE or something.
Yeah, getting back to bridging the digital divide. So I think the statistic is 1 in 4 New Yorkers don't actually have a smartphone. They're still working with like a flip phone or a Nokia. And so I think one of the things that we would like to see is maybe we can pass around maybe NFC cards. And so that user could maybe go up to a link and kind of use it to maybe not necessarily fully identify themselves, but just to say this is me. And then they could do something like look up Google Maps, right? And they want to go somewhere up in the Bronx, they're in Midtown right now. And so when they walk away, they still have their NFC card, and if maybe they're navigating, they can use the links as like a waypoint, right? They walk back up here, you immediately flash the NFC, and then it brings back up like the last Google Map search that you were on, and it'll maybe help them kind of quicker find their way through. Again, these are not approved by anybody. This isn't on the official roadmap. It's just like things that I think we as engineers would like to see in our spare time. And fortunately, there's nobody here that can know that we have spare time at the office. We kind of do little POCs with things like this.
Yeah, definitely. And it definitely would be great to get a partner with more apps. It'd be great if we could get some type of local events going on, knowing where the cool next meetup is, or even just knowing where a restaurant is. Another thing that we might want to add is video chat. Get Skype on there or something.
All right.
So yeah.
So thank you. Real quick, we want to give a shout out to Touch Labs, not just because they provide these meetups every month, but also because we have been using one of their developer resources, Izzy, if you don't mind standing up. Actually,
why don't you come on up here?
We like to bring her up.
You gotta be here for the Q&A,
She has been working on the tablet for about 1.5 years now, I want to say, which is actually longer than either myself or Blake. So any questions you have about it, you can feel free to ask her as well.
Yeah. And also, of course, we're hiring, so come help help bridge the digital divide and help the New York City community.
Yeah.
So we have some time for questions if anybody's got anything. We're good.
So, one second. Let me get the mic in so we can get
This is not awfully technical, but given that some of these phone boxes were put up maybe 50 years ago and maybe they last worked 20 years ago, do people actually use a link to make phone calls, or are they on the net?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of usage on the phone calls actually, especially since it's the phone calls are free within the United States, so you don't need quarters anymore or anything like that. So it's actually a really popular usage of the kiosk we've seen.
Hi, over here.
Yeah. Okay.
If you drive up Third Avenue, does it auto reconnect as you drive uptown?
Yes, with iOS 6 devices. We're working later. Yeah, I know, right? Android. I believe. Any device. Oh, so I'm informed.
one sec, let's do this.
Nice. It's the opposite of selfie stick.
Thanks.
For the telephone service, are you using voice over IP, or is it still a telephone landline?
No, yeah, we're partners with Vonage, so voice over IP. They provide the service.
Yeah, they actually wrote the app, so they're one of the integrated apps that we have on the tablet.
Hello. Have you guys considered or ever weighed a sign-in feature? I feel like it might be something that's limiting in terms of me browsing and then forgetting to sign out of my browser. Is the next person, able to continue from that session, or there's a refresh or some sort of sign-in process that's involved?
So if you forget to end your session, like I mentioned before, the power manager will detect that inactivity. It times out after 30 seconds. We've seen that that's plenty of time. Excuse me? You've seen after what? After about 30 seconds. So after you've left and stopped interacting with it, that user session rolls over, your user was deleted, and whoever comes up next gets a fresh user.
But definitely log out explicitly if you want to be secure. We find that the self-log out works a lot. If someone's just viewing maps or something that's not super private. But the log out's good if you log into Gmail or anything.
But you guys haven't designed that in order to do online banking or anything like that. It's just like a general purpose kiosk, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should use your own internet health sanity, right? If you're using the tablet, you should try to figure out your own. I mean, we do everything we can to protect your privacy, but if you forget to log out, then yeah, someone might be able to get in. But for the most part, I mean, as long as you log out, there's no way someone's going back to your bank account or anything like that.
Any other questions?
What kind of user data is tracking? I think it's significant. So the question is, what kind of user data are you collecting right now?
So we're not collecting.
I mean, in terms of app usage, you're definitely tracking certain things.
Yeah. So we're getting all the usage logs from the tablet. So anything you see on the ADB right now, we're sending up to the servers, and then we're just for getting crash logs and everything like that. But for the most part, I mean, I don't know exactly all the data because there's also the networking team that's also doing stuff. So, but for the most part, we're using OpenDNS and trying to just to help protect the tablets and everything like that.
I got it. You go first.
Sorry.
Is all internet traffic used through a Link Wi-Fi spot encrypted? And then on top of that, if I use any browser on the tablet, is all of that traffic encrypted as well?
I believe on the tablet, as long as you're still going to an SSL website, but on the network, it is encrypted from to the access point.
Any ideas on the VPN timeline for Android?
No, we're going to stick with NFC and Bluetooth for a little while. I don't really know anything about doing the VPN on that.
That's awkward. What are the architectural problems if you were trying to expand LinkNYC out of the actual city into Long Island or Queens or Brooklyn? I don't know if I haven't seen it in Brooklyn, so that's why I'm asking.
It's coming. It's coming. A lot of it's running fiber, so the infrastructure's old. Google still needs to get some of that fiber out there. I'm sure there's a ton more of architectural problems that we just don't know about because we're kind of down in the trenches with the Android, whereas we have several companies that we work with to do infrastructure and things like that.
This is really awkward. How are you guys dealing with current hardware limitations? How are you planning to deal with that over time? Where's your engineering team's thought process on that right now?
So what do you mean by hardware limitations?
So hardware is going to change eventually. What's your Min SDK now? How are you guys planning on going forward with additional features that come up with Android? What's your battle plan?
Yeah, I think in terms of hardware, we'll definitely have to have some type of hardware refresh every X number of years. But I think right now we're just at the initial launch, so I don't know if there's such a detailed battle plan on that. But it's a matter of just seeing what comes in the future. You can't really plan for the future because you don't really know what hardware you need. But yeah, hardware refresh would probably be something that we'd probably need to do.
Split screen. How long? I don't know.
Split screen is software, so we could roll that out. Yeah. We do OTAs regularly.
What is your testing process for when you do you do any sort of testing when the link is already deployed out there, or is everything basically done in-house and then pushed?
As far as Android testing? Or?
Yeah, and just software testing in general. Do you guys do everything in-house and then kind of deploy and and then handle crashes from there? Or do you guys do any full like integration testing with the devices, out and in action?
So obviously we do like unit testing and integration testing like locally. Once we push it out, we do send somebody out to like manually test. But then otherwise, yeah, we are relying on like crash logs and things like that. And those things are heavily monitored. So when a crash occurs, we get an alert and then we can kind of jump right on it.
And then just OTAs from there, basically?
Exactly. It's really, we have a pretty quick turnaround on those OTAs. So when it's time to fix something, we get it out.
I have a quick question. How does device identifiers work cross user? Like, is there a separate IFA per user, or is
a separate what?
IFA, like identifier for advertiser for Google, like that all apps use for? Yeah.
The Google identifier for advertising.
That's a good question, and maybe I'll get back to you. I don't know, because
advertiseusebutton.com.
I don't think you get a different advertiser ID. I don't think you would, but I actually can tell,
Yeah, we haven't worked on anything with that needs it. So any app that might want to use that, we would have to probably integrate separately. But right now we don't. I mean, all our apps are approved by us. So if they're using IAD, we would have to do something else for them.
Okay, so you already do have Google services. So you do have Google services running on the tablet, or do you have like just a special subset for the maps, or?
Oh, so there's none of the Google Play services are running on it. So if you have your app using it, it wouldn't work on it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's very
cool. Okay, got it.
Cool. Any other questions?
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.